see, Republican Senator Rand Paul has seen firsthand the anger and division in America right now, from Tuesday's State of the Union to the ballpark where gunmen tried to kill GOP congressmen. And even in his own front yard. I mean, yeah, the world is rough. But he came. Didn't bother him. He came and hung out with us. So, please welcome Senator Rand Paul. So, Senator, we heard about the altercation and all that, but how are you doing? Because it was a little more serious than people led us to believe.
Yeah, and I didn't know how badly I was hurt in the beginning. I knew I was having trouble breathing and pain with the breath. Then I found out I had 6 broken ribs. 3 of the ribs were sort of broken and displaced. Right. And so as they heal, they'll sort of heal in a crooked fashion. But then I also discovered that my lung was damaged underneath it, and I had pneumonia a couple times. And to describe sort of what it's like, how much it hurt, I couldn't sit up. I had to have help to sit up for the first 4 or 5 weeks.
And it was a neighbor who attacked you.
That's a drag.
Yeah, who knew you had to have armed protection to mow your yard, you know?
But the guy claims that it was over your lawn. How bad was the lawn, exactly? Were there dead leaves?
There were a few rabbits, you know, in the long grass and, you know, varmints, but it's Kentucky. I thought you could have long grass.
But that's what he said it was about. He said, I couldn't stand
his lawn. Yeah, I think it's more than that. I think,
what is it?
I don't know. Somebody who's going to attack you has to have something else wrong other than that, other than your yard.
So you think it's just a nutcase?
You know, I don't know exactly. It's hard to know what's in the mind of someone, but I think it fits in, and it, you know, with the whole idea of the country being angry, whether it's over your yard or whether it's over, even the guy that shot us in the ball field, he was known as a guy who one of his neighbors told him to quit shooting his gun in the backyard because his kids were out there, and he hit the neighbor with the stock of his gun in the face. So there are just some people out there that are so angry.
I know, and they all have guns, though, Senator. I mean, maybe they should look into that.
There's just a great deal of anger, and there's somehow we have to do better.
Well, you just brought up the horrific tragedy of Steve Scalise being shot, and I remember I was on vacation, and I took my breath away. I started crying. It's so scary. You're actually there on the baseball field. Do you think his motivations were political?
You know, yes, but I mean, I guess the real thing that people ought to realize is that we are all human like anybody else. Steve Scalise being shot, he almost died. He went through 20 different surgeries. I was about 10 feet from a young staffer who was shot. And scrambling out of there, I tried to reach my wife on the phone to tell her that I'm okay, but I didn't have a phone. And so I read a random person coming down the road who it turned out worked on the Hill. He gave me his phone, and I'm dialing my wife. She's not picking up random numbers at 6 in the morning. And so she found out because one of her neighbors came over knocking on the door so she wouldn't see it on TV that I was okay. But I think people think sometimes because we're Republicans or Democrats, liberals or conservatives, that somehow it's okay to want violence towards each other, and it's not. But I think one of the untold stories is if you come to Washington, I have many good friends across the aisle. Ron Wyden I work with on privacy. Kirsten Gillibrand I've worked on military assault. There are many different members that we've worked with on both sides. Criminal justice reform, I've worked with Cory Booker and others. So.
And Steve Scalise is doing better, correct?
But, you know, initially, and it's the funny thing about an injury, the funny thing with the tragic thing about an injury like this is you see a hole this big and you think, oh, maybe he's not that badly hurt. But it turned out he was very severely hurt with internal damage, and he just had another operation just in the last week. But I think it's looking up for him, and but yeah, he's been through a lot. Will he ever walk or be able to run like he once could? I don't know. He's hoping to, but I mean, it's a year out. I mean, he's really, you know, been brave to go through so much.
Yes, 100%.
We wish him well. Well, can we get into some hot topics?
As long as they're easy.
Well, President Trump is supposed to release this controversial House memo any moment now. We've been watching, despite the fact that he got grave warnings from his own appointed FBI director, Chris Wray, and the Department of Justice about how dangerous it really could be for the country to release this. Do you think it's a good idea? Do you want it out there?
You know, I think there are people that are partisan on each side of the issue. When the election was going on, I think many people thought that the FBI got too involved and that may have cost Clinton the election.
Right.
Then after that happened, they thought, well, maybe they've gotten too involved on the side of attacking Trump. I think maybe the FBI should do their job, but maybe be a little quieter during election season so they don't influence elections one way or the other. One thing I'm worried about, though, about intelligence is every president for maybe the last 100 years has used and abused intelligence on their opponents. If you remember during the Civil Rights era, Martin Luther King was spied upon, civil rights leaders were spied upon, Vietnam protesters were spied upon, Nixon had his enemy list, LBJ spied on Goldwater. So really what we need to remember is what we have now is intelligence that can vacuum up so many phone calls. For example, there was an admission that they took all the phone calls between the United States and Italy and soaked all of them up into a database. Every phone call in 1 month from Italy. And so journalists are in there. If journalists are communicating...
They had a warrant for that.
No, they don't. They soak it all up without any warrant from foreigners. And then this database now has Americans, because some people in foreign lands can talk to people here, and so they can search the database. So my point has really been less about the specifics of this and more about that we should ask a judge. So we see sometimes...
You didn't answer my question. Are you in favor of releasing the memo?
Yes, absolutely. Because
you are.
We need more sunshine and we need more oversight. So,
really?
for example...
You're
How
not
about some
concerned
tax
about...
returns if we need some sunshine?
You're not concerned about the classified information?
So what I would say, Joy, first of all, and that is, you can argue for sunshine on his tax returns, but do you want the IRS to search his database and secretly give that out to the media? Do you want your tax returns?
I wanted to give it to the FBI.
Yeah. Well, nobody's tax returns should be given to anyone unless a judge has a warrant for why you have probable cause.
We agree, but he's under investigation. He's possibly in violation of the emoluments clause. I would think they'd like to look at his tax.
He's the first president that has never released them.
There's a very valid political point that you can make that he should release them when he's running for office.
Right.
But as far as the worrisome thing is that the government has all of your information. Do you want them releasing it willy-nilly against their enemies? And think who the enemies are. The enemies are people that are minorities of opinion, minorities of color, people who have a lifestyle that other people think is unacceptable. Do you want the government or the majority to be able to selectively target their enemies?
Well, but did anybody say this when the FBI first when Comey was doing his back and forth with who he was? I mean, I appreciate all this transparency, but you know what? It's a little bit late for y'all, for all of them, Democrats and Republicans, because I just feel like, listen, if you're going to give me a piece of information, give me all the information. Don't cherry pick it. Give me everything.
Well, Paul Ryan wants to put the Democratic memo to counter this out now. You agree with that?
I'm fine with that. But I will say that if you look at my positions, I had the same position under President Obama that I have under President Trump. And that is that the power to listen to people's conversation, your private conversations, are private and nobody else's business, and the government should not reveal that.
Okay, so when Bush decided that they needed to make sure that they could find out where the terrorists were or knew all of that. So how does that work? Is that because, if we're concerned about terrorism and we're banning people from coming in, one would think you'd want to know if somebody said on the phone call, I'm coming and I'm bringing everything.
So we have this program. We have this program, it's called FISA, Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. And so we spy on foreigners, and they actually don't get warrants for that. They just spy on every foreigner, and that's to prevent terrorism. And I'm fine with that. But when those foreigners talk to Americans, it's not always Americans have talked to terrorists. Could be journalists talk to people overseas. They can be trapped in that. It could be presidents, senators, congressmen talk to people overseas, and they get caught up in this database. What you don't want is someone who has an enemies list, someone who says, I don't like the civil rights activists, or I don't like the Vietnam War protesters, I don't like white people, black people, brown people. You want to make sure that bias and bigotry cannot happen, but that's how you...
But you want it not happening on both sides. So you want to make sure that if you're going to do that, then it applies to everybody. You can't pick and choose who's got the good enemies and who's got the bad enemies. That's just
so for example, as this came out 3 weeks ago, our side, the privacy advocates that say government should leave you alone, we advocated to fix FISA. had nothing to do with Trump, Russia.
Yeah, but you know what it has to do with now, and it looks a little shady. I'm just saying.
But actually, we kind of got the shaft by Nunes. Nunes actually didn't present this information till after he reauthorized FISA for 6 years. We wanted to have a better debate because all we were asking for is that the president, anybody that searches this database that types in Whoopi Goldberg should go to a judge first, and someone who doesn't like you shouldn't be allowed to type your name in the database.
Too late. They got me. Before we go, you know, we never have enough time. We never have enough time, so you're going to have to come back. But before we go, you feel like marijuana should be legalized in the United States?
Yeah, I think it's a terrible crime to put people in jail for pot. And I think if you look at who's in jail for pot, it's primarily black and brown people.
That's true.
It's poor people. It's people who don't have enough for an attorney. There's a great book by Michelle Alexander called The New Jim Crow.
Yeah, it's a great book.
The number one impediment to voting rights anymore is actually having a criminal record, and it disproportionately. If you look at people who smoke marijuana, white people, black people smoke it at the same percentage, but everybody in prison's black. Something's wrong.
And why is that? Why is that?
It's because of the institutionalized racism.
I know.
Thanks to Senator Rand Paul. Come back, man. Come back. We'll be right back.